Okay, welcome students. So after the Bohr's model of nitrogen atoms, now the Bohr's important postulates we are going to see. Bohr's postulate for a hydrogen atom. Actually, Niels Bohr, he worked in Rutherford's lab. He combined the earlier quantum concept and the earlier classical wave concepts. Okay, and he combined the two concepts and he explained the hydrogen atoms. So while he explained hydrogen atom, he gave the three famous postulates. So according to Bohr, the first two postulates is stationary orbit. Stationary orbit, that is also called non-radiating orbit. So what is the stationary orbit? Already we know Niels Bohr also took only the simple atom like a hydrogen atom. So for a simple hydrogen atoms that contains only one proton and only one electron. So this proton electron system, okay, the electron always revolves around the nucleus, that is the proton, okay, in a circular path. So the electron cannot jump from their own orbit to another orbit. So when an electron revolves in their own orbit that does not emit any radiations, so the corresponding orbit is called stationary orbit or non-radiating orbit. I repeat once again. So for a simple hydrogen atom that contains one proton and one electron, so this proton electron system, the electron always revolves around the nucleus in a fixed path. So while the electron revolves around the nucleus in the fixed path, it does not emit any radiations. So the particular orbit or the particular path is called stationary orbit or stationary path. Moreover, it does not emit any radiations. So it is also called non-radiating orbit. So this is the first postulate set by Niels Bohr. The second one is, so stationary orbit over. The second one, frequency conditions. Before the frequency conditions, we have quantization conditions. That is Bohr's quantization conditions. So this already you are studying in the first lesson. So what is the quantization condition? So when an electron revolves around the nucleus, okay, and the electron revolves around the nucleus in a fixed path that have angular momentum, okay, because it spins around the nucleus. So the electron have angular momentum. So this angular momentum is some integral multiples of h by 2 pi. So this already we studied in the first chapter, so we will not explain detail. So from second postulate about the quantization conditions. So what is quantization conditions? When an electron revolves around the nucleus, okay, it is in the first orbit. So in the first orbit it has angular momentum. So the angular momentum is some integral multiples of h by 2 pi. So in this case, n is the integer. It starts from 1, 2, 3, 4 up to etc. And h is the Planck's constant. So Max Planck also stated the same things. So h is the Planck's constant. We know the value. It is 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule second. So this is Planck's constant value, and 2 pi also constant. So whenever the electron revolves around the nucleus for a nitrogen atom that has angular momentum, so the angular momentum is some integral multiples of h by 2 pi. So that was stated here. L is equal to nh by 2 pi. L is the angular momentum and n is the integral values. Also we can say it's a principal quantum number in the latter cases. H is the Planck's constant. And third condition is frequency conditions. Moving to the third postulates, that is a frequency condition. So frequency conditions. And from the second concept, the quantization condition of that is L is equal to NH by 2 pi. Okay. So frequency conditions. What the third postulate says. Listen. Always the electron revolves around the nucleus, that is a non-radiating orbital, you know. So whenever the electron, that transition takes place from one higher energy level of non-radiating orbit to another one lower energy level. Actually, consider initially the electron is in higher energy level of one non-radiating orbit, and it's going to jump. The electron is going to jump from higher energy level to lower energy level. So whenever the electron jumps from higher energy level non-radiating orbit to lower energy level non-radiating orbit, it emits some radiations. Okay, so the emitted radiations will be the difference in the energy level. So the condition is called frequency conditions. Repeat once again. The electron always revolves around the nucleus. So while it revolves around the nucleus, it does not emit any radiations. Suppose if electron transition takes place from one energy level to another one energy level, electron trying to skip from their own orbit to another one, at the time it emits radiations. So that one is stated here. So whenever the electron transition takes place from one higher energy level to lower energy level, actually both energy level are also non-radiating orbit. At the time while the electron jumping, it emits the radiations. So the emitted radiation will be difference in the frequency level. Therefore, the emitted radiation will be difference in their energy level. Okay, so that is emitted radiations. E is equal to difference in energy level. Actually, energy is greater in the higher level, energy is lower in the ground level. So this is the state is called excited state, we used to say, and this is the ground state. So when the electron transition takes place from excited state to the ground state, or higher energy level to lower energy level, it emits some kind of radiations. So E2 minus E1. Already we know it emits photons, no, it emits some energy. So according to Planck's quantum theory, E is equal to h nu. So h nu is equal to E2 minus E1. Here the frequency is proportional to the difference in the energy level. So this is the case is called frequency conditions. So these are the three postulates. I repeat once again. Bohr worked in Rutherford's lab. He combined the earlier quantum concept along with the classical wave theory to an hydrogen atom, and he studied on the continuous spectrum. Then he gave the three famous postulates. The first postulate is stationary orbit. What is a stationary orbit? Whenever an electron revolves around a nucleus in their core, it does not emit radiation, so the corresponding orbit is called stationary orbit or non-radiating orbit. Okay. So while it revolves around this nucleus, it has an angular momentum. The angular momentum is some integral multiples of h by 2 pi. So this is called quantization conditions because charge can be quantized. Okay. Third one is frequency conditions. So whenever an electron transition takes place from one higher energy level to lower energy level, it emits some radiations. So the radiation is proportional to difference in their energy level. So this is called frequency conditions. So kindly make it the note of the three postulates. The first one about the orbit, second one quantization condition, third one frequency conditions. So based on these postulates, using these postulates, now we are going to determine the radius of nth orbit of an hydrogen atom. Okay. Nth orbit of radius of hydrogen atom. So we know that For a simple hydrogen atom, so this is the structure, atomic structure. So in this atomic structure, the nucleus is held at the center. So this is the nucleus. So is a D, the nuclear mass. That contains one proton, no? Yes, nuclear mass. So around this, the electron is held here. So this is an electron, that is E minus. So the electron continuously revolves around this nucleus with the radius, fixed radius, that is constant radius Rn, having the linear velocity Vn. Suppose if the electrons skip from their orbit, then velocity also will changes. Okay, but the orbital radius does not changes. So here the atom is stable due to the force between the electrons and the nucleus. So in this nucleus electron system, already we know we have two forces. What are the two forces? One is Coulomb force, another one is centripetal force. Now we are going to determine the two forces. What are the two forces? According to Coulomb force, between nucleus comma electron, so that is Coulomb force. Coulomb's electrostatic force. So Coulomb's electrostatic force, Coulomb's electrostatic force, which is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Ze into E by R n square. So this is one equation 1. Okay. Similarly, the centripetal force we know that. What is the centripetal force? So centripetal force between this system, centripetal force between the nucleus and an electron, that is Fc is equal to mv squared by R. So this is the centripetal force, equation number 2. So compare both equations 1 and 2. Left hand sides are equal. Automatically right hand side will be equal, no? So equal right hand side. So mv n square by Rn, which is equal to Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught Rn square. Okay, but we want only the angular velocity. So V is equal to R omega. That is the relation between linear velocity and angular velocity. So substitute here. So you will change the equation into mv is equal to R omega square. So for R square and omega square by Rn denominator value, and Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught Rn square. Okay. So after modifications, we get mRn omega n square is equal to Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught into Rn square. No, but we want only omega n square. So omega n square is equal to Ze square by m into 4 by epsilon naught. This Rn will come to denominator. Already Rn square is there. So Rn cubed. Okay. So this is one equations. So we'll write here. What is the equations? Omega n square is equal to Ze square by 4 by m epsilon naught into Rn cubed. This is equation number 3. Okay. Similarly, we are going to determine the angular velocity value from Bohr's second postulates. What is the Bohr's second postulates? From Bohr's second postulates, the angular momentum is some integral multiples of h by 2 pi, no? Yes. Already angular momentum value we know. What is the angular momentum? mvr. So angular momentum is equal to, but n is equal to mvn rn. Okay. So substitute. Then how will you modify? So mvn rn is equal to nh by 2 pi. Okay. And we know that the relation between linear velocity and angular velocity, that is v is equal to r omega. So substitute the value here. So m into v is equal to r omega and rn is there, then nh by 2 pi. So bracket will write v is equal to r omega, that is vn is equal to rn omega n. Okay, so rn into rn become rn square of yes rn square. So now square on both sides, what you will get? Squaring on both sides, squaring both sides, we will get m square rn power 4 omega n square, which is equal to n square h square by 4 pi square of, but we want only rn power, sorry, omega n square. Therefore omega n square, which is equal to n square h square by 4 pi square into m rn power 4. Okay, right? So this is equation number 4. So what is the fourth equations? We'll write here. So omega n square is equal to n square h square divided by 4 pi square. 4 pi square, we forgot to write m square. Okay. M square rn power 4. So now this is equation number 4. Now once again compare these two equations. By comparing these two equations, left hand sides are equal. Automatically right hand side will be equal, no? So what is the aim of this concept? We are going to determine nth orbital radius, that is Rn. We are going to find what is the nth orbital radius. For that we are using these things. Once again I will read. First we want to determine the two forces. What are the two forces? Electrostatic force and then centripetal force. From the two forces we are equating and we are finding omega n square. The next we are using Bohr's second postulates. So from the Bohr's second postulates we are going to determine once again omega n square. So this is the equation from comparison of the two forces. This is the equation from the Bohr's second postulates. Okay. Now compare the equation 3 and 4. The left hand sides are equal. Automatically the right hand side will be equal. So we equate the right hand side. So what you will get? Equation 4 is equal to 3 because right hand side, left hand side is equal. Automatically right hand side will be equal. So RHS are, what is our right hand side? N square h square divided by 4 pi square m square Rn power 4, which is equal to z e square by 4 pi m epsilon naught into Rn cube. Then we can eliminate the common factors. 4 pi square pi, and only pi is left. Here m square m, and only m is left. Here Rn, this will be cancelled. So finally, what will happen? So in these equations, finally, the nth orbital radius can easily determine. So transfer this denominator term onto this right hand side terms. So also we can write like this: z e square by epsilon naught, which is equal to m square h square by pi m Rn. So this bracket terms and this denominator nth orbital radius mutually exchange. This one and this one mutually exchange. Finally, we will get the nth orbital radius. That is nth orbital radius is equal to n square h square divided by z e square divided by epsilon naught into pi m. And this value will go to numerator. No, numerator and denominator will change. So Rn is equal to n square h square epsilon naught divided by pi m z e square. Okay, so this is the nth orbital radius and this is also called Bohr radius. Now we can determine the value very easily. So how to find the value? Okay, for a hydrogen atom that mass number is only 1, no? So if you substitute 1 here, then what you will get? N square h square epsilon naught divided by pi m z e square. Since z is equal to 1, so this value goes. Okay, so this is nth orbital radius, and for a hydrogen atom, the electron is in the first number. So the principal quantum number is 1. Also, n is equal to 1. So the principal quantum number for a hydrogen atom is 1. Therefore, R1 is equal to, before R1, Rn is equal to n square into h square epsilon naught by pi m e square. All these values are constant. Planck's constant, permittivity in free space, pi 3.14 or 22 by 7, mass of an electron 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kilogram, and charge of an electron 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb. By substituting all the constant value, we will get Rn is equal to n square into 0.53 Armstrong, that is 10 to the power minus 10. Okay, and for an hydrogen atom, the electron is in the first principal quantum number 1 only, no? So finally R1 is equal to 0.1 square value is 1, 0.53 Armstrong. So for an hydrogen atom, from the nucleus, the electron is located how much distance? 0.53 Armstrong. So atomic radius comes in the order of Armstrong. Okay, this is the atomic radius, comes in the Armstrong. We got the nth orbital radius. Very simple things. The derivation looks like bigger, but very simple steps only. We want to find the nth orbital radius. For that, we are going to use the two concepts. First, we are going to find the angular velocity. This angular velocity is obtained from electrostatic force and the centripetal force. Okay. After finding the two force, we are equating the left hand side. Automatically, right hand side will be equal. Then next, more second postulates. What is the second postulates? N is equal to ns by 2 pi. And in this angle orbital we are substituting, and after rearranging you will get these two equations. So comparing these two equations, left hand sides are equal, automatically right hand sides would be equal. By equating the right hand side and rearranging, and finally you get the nth orbital radius. So this is the common formula for nth orbital radius. But for an hydrogen atom, the mass number is 1 and the electron is located in the principal quantum number first. Okay, so this is the radius, radius of an hydrogen atom. Understood? Okay. Now we are going to see the energy of an hydrogen atom. Welcome dear students. So last class we have seen the atom legends up to the spectral series. Okay. So in the spectral series, before the spectral series, the various atomic model we have seen. Start from Rutherford atom model up to the Rutherford atom model. Start from J.J. Thomson atom model up to the Rutherford atom model, and then we have seen the spectral series. In that hydrogen spectral series we have seen. It starts from line 1 up to P1. Okay. The next one is Balmer series, and in the Balmer series, how to find the wavelength of the spectral series from the empirical formula. Okay. So now we are going to see Bohr model of an atoms. That is for hydrogen atom. Bohr's model of a hydrogen atom. Okay, we know that they used a hydrogen atom because it is very simplest atom that contains only one proton and only one electrons. Okay. So what means Bohr's set? Before the Bohr's models, first we will see this is a hydrogen nucleus. Okay, so around the hydrogen nucleus, the electron revolves in a circular orbit. The electron that revolves around this hydrogen nucleus in a circular orbit, because the hydrogen atom that contains one proton and one electron. So for a simple hydrogen atoms, that is a nucleus electron system. We can say it is a nucleus electron system. Is attractive in nature because there is a force acts between the electron to the nucleus, that is Coulomb's law of force. That force can be determined by Coulomb's law of forces. So nuclear electron system is a charged object because nucleus is positive charge, electron is negative charge. So nucleus is positive charge and the electron is negative charge. So the system is charged object. held between by Coulomb's law of force. Moreover, for stable atom, always the nucleus is stationary. Around the nucleus in an orbit, the electron that revolves. Okay, so these electrons continuously get accelerated around the nucleus. So there is a force provided to an electron to the nucleus. The force is nothing but centrifugal force. That is called center-seeking force. Okay, so the center-seeking force always acts towards the center. So there is another one force provided giving the electron to the nucleus is centrifugal force. So for an electron continuously revolves, continuously accelerated around the nucleus, so the electron continuously revolves around the nucleus by centrifugal force. Okay, so here two forces we can say. The first force is Coulomb force. So the Coulomb force between the charged objects. What are the charged objects? Here the one means a particle. One is a nucleus that is positively charged. Another one is electron that is negatively charged. So between the positive charge to the negatively charged electrons, there is a Coulomb force is there, and the electron is continuously accelerated around the orbit, around the nucleus in an orbit. So by the force is centrifugal force. Okay. So normally when an electron revolving around this what is the nucleus? When an electron revolves around the nucleus, according to electromagnetic theory, that is classical electromagnetic theory. So according to classical electromagnetic wave theory, not a particle theory, we are seeing only the wave theory. According to classical electromagnetic wave theory, it states that when an electron continuously revolves around the nucleus, it radiates the energy, okay, which means it loses its energy. So whenever an electron revolves around the nucleus, continuously it loses energy in the form of radiations. Okay, so finally what will happen? The electron, when it revolves around the nucleus continuously, like this, around the nucleus like this, and it releases the radiations. So when it releases the radiations, it loses the energy, and finally it falls into the nucleus. Okay. So this is a statement by classical electromagnetic theory. So classical electromagnetic theory says that whenever an electron revolves around the nucleus, it emits radiations. So when an electron emits the radiations with some frequencies, then the orbital size is gradually reduced, the path radius is gradually reduces, and finally they fall into the nucleus. Okay, so that it emits a continuous spectrum. Okay, so we'll write the statement from the electromagnetic theory. So while electron revolves around nucleus, it emits radiations, so loses the energy, loses its energy, and finally the electron would coil inwards the nucleus. Electron would coil inwards the nucleus. Okay, so this is a statement said by classical electromagnetic theory. Once again I am saying, for a simple hydrogen atom, whenever an electron revolves around the nucleus, so while it's revolving around the nucleus, it emits radiations in the form of waves. So gradually it reduces its energy in its part, and finally coil inwards the nucleus. So the atom will be stable or unstable? Unstable. Therefore, the atom will be unstable. So in this case, In this case, we are going to check the angular velocity and the frequency. Okay. Before knowing that, first we'll see the frequency. So the frequency of emitted radiation is equal to frequency of revolving electron. So in this case, the frequency of revolving electron will be equal to frequency of electromagnetic waves emitted by electrons. Frequency of electromagnetic waves emitted by orbiting electrons. So finally the atom will be unstable. Okay. So because of these cases, the angular velocity also changes. Moreover, okay, it emits a continuous spectrum. Therefore, it emits a continuous spectrum. Therefore, it emits continuous spectrum. But actually, we know that for an hydrogen atom, we observe only the line spectrum, emits the line and absorbs the line. Okay, but actual spectrum observed by using the hydrogen atom is line spectrum, that is totally contradiction to this classical wave theory. That's what the classical wave theory's failure to explain photoelectric effect in the previous lesson based me. Here, it emits a continuous spectrum according to the classical wave theory, which is contradiction to the line spectrum actually observed. To the line spectrum actually observed. Okay. So from the Bohr model of nitrogen atom, we can say the Rutherford limitations. So Rutherford forgot to explain the line spectrum. Moreover, this concept based on the electromagnetic theory. He used a simple hydrogen atom, but he couldn't explain how the simple hydrogen atom that emits a complex line spectrum. So these two reasons are the limitation of Rutherford atom models. Okay, he done this experiment correctly, but he forgot to explain many things which is related to the line spectrum. Okay. So once again I will recall the topic. So for a simple hydrogen atom, it contains one proton and one electron. Okay, for a hydrogen atom it contains one proton and one electron. So the protons, there is only one proton which is in the nucleus having positive charge. Around this nucleus in an orbit only one electron that revolves. So whenever the electron that revolves around the nucleus, okay, continuously emits radiation in the form of waves according to wave theory. So while it emits the radiations with some frequencies, gradually it loses the energy. Finally, the electron would coil inwards the nucleus. Okay, so in this case, the atom will not be stable. The atom become unstable. So the frequency of revolving electron, which is equal to frequency of the radiations emitted by the electrons. So in this case, according to the classical wave theory, only the continuous spectrum will be obtained, but actual spectrum we obtain is a line spectrum. So this is experimental spectrum observed by hydrogen atom, but according to wave theory, we got only the continuous spectrums. So this is totally contradiction to the line spectrum what we observe. Okay, thank you. Okay, children. Now we are going to see the electron energy of nth orbit. Okay. So last topic is nth orbital radius. Now what is the electron energy in this nth orbit we are going to see. So the total energy of the system is sum of potential and kinetic energy that we are known that. So total energy of electron is, that is total energy of an electron is sum of potential and kinetic energy. So this is the concept. So first we find the potential energy. So the potential energy EP is equal to, what is the electrostatic potential energy? Electrostatic potential energy we are familiar, that is K Q1 Q2 by Rn This one you know. So value of k is proportionality constant. So that is 1 by 4 by epsilon naught. Q1 is the nucleus. So nucleus contains Ze and Q2 is the electron, that is minus E divided by Rn. So the total energy of an electron is, potential energy of an electron is, that is potential energy is equal to E become E square. So minus comes here. So minus Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught Rn. So this is equation 2. Now we are going to determine the kinetic energy. What is the kinetic energy? Similarly, the kinetic energy of an electron is half mv square or half mv square. But already we have seen the formula. Can you remember where we have seen this? Second postulate. Yes. So from second postulate, L is equal to nh by 2 pi, no? So there mvn Rn is equal to nh by 2 pi. Okay. So we want only mvn square. Half mv square only is correct. Distribute. The kinetic energy is half mv square. So the mv square value we know that. What is mv square value? So from this, that mv square is equal to Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught into Rn. Okay. So substitute the value here. So what is the value? Half into, instead of mv square, what is it? Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught into Rn. So finally got the value is Ze square by 2 4s are 8 by epsilon naught into Rn. This is equation number 3. Okay, and by multiplying this you will get Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught Rn. So this is potential, this is kinetic energy. So the total energy of the system is the sum of potential and kinetic, no? Yes, add the two things. Therefore, from 1, the total energy is the sum of potential and the kinetic. So what is the potential energy value? Minus Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught into Rn, and the kinetic energy value is plus Ze square by 8 by epsilon naught into Rn. We can take the common factor outside. What is that? Ze square by 4 by epsilon naught into Rn. In bracket, inside the bracket we have minus 1 plus 1 by 2. So if we take cross multiplication, we get minus 2 by 2. Minus 2 plus 1 by 2. What is the value? Minus 1 by 2. Yes. So after that, after the energy, we get minus 1 by 2. So take the minus outside. Finally, the energy will be minus Ze square by 2 4s are 8 by epsilon naught into Rn. So this is the total energy. Now we want to estimate the value. So how to estimate the value? Here we want to substitute the nth orbital radius. Already we know the nth orbital radius. So substitute nth orbital radius here. What is the nth orbital radius? So already we know the nth orbital radius also. We are determining the nth orbital radius, that is nh square by, but nth orbital radius is n square h square epsilon naught by pi m e square. Am I right? Yes. So substitute this in equation 4. What is equation 4? So the total energy is minus Ze square by 8 by epsilon naught Rn. No? So here you substitute this value. So what you get? Minus Ze square by 8 by epsilon naught instead of Rn. N square h square epsilon naught divided by pi m e square. Okay. So this pi and this pi will cancel, and the m square goes there. Okay, so finally minus z m e square into e square become e power 4 divided by f8 epsilon naught into epsilon naught square n square h square. Okay, so this is the value we got. And for hydrogen atom, what is the mass number? 1. Okay, so we can further modify this equation into minus m e power 4 divided by 8 epsilon naught square n square h square. Since the mass number of the hydrogen atom is 1, we are going to find the total energy of an hydrogen atom. No? Yes, there is electron energy of an hydrogen atom in nth orbit. Okay, so in this formula, see, except n square, the remaining things, the total energy of nth orbit is 1 by n square of minus m e power 4 divided by 8 epsilon naught square into h square. So all this is a constant. Mass of an electron, charge of an electron, 8 is a constant number, permittivity, Planck's constant. By substituting all the constant value, finally you will get the value minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 joule divided by n square. So this is the value we obtained. Okay, so this is the value we obtained. But the electron energy level always should mention in electron volt because it is an atomic scale. Okay, so for an atomic scale, joule is not a sufficient unit to use. So we are going to change the joule into electron volt. How will you change? Have to divide. Okay, so divide the value. So minus 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 divided by n square. So joule into electron volt have to divide. So 1 by 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 electron volt. Okay, so the joule we are converted into electron volt. So after substituting and rearranging, finally the value is minus 13.6 divided by n square electron volt. So therefore the total energy, that is electron energy in nth orbit, is minus 13.6 by n square electron volt. We are obtained this. Okay, so in which case the electron transition takes place, according to the two substitute we can easily determine the energy level. Okay, so this is for an hydrogen atom. For an hydrogen atom, nth orbital energy level is this value, as 13.6 by n square eV. How this value comes from? The 10 to the power minus 19 to bring numerator into denominator, and you will get 10 raised 1. Already 2.18 is there. Okay, the 2.18 divided by 1.6 by multiplying, you will get this value. So this is the electron energy of nth orbit. And last class we have seen the nth orbital radius. This is electron energy of nth orbit. Okay, don't forget, this is very important things. So next class we are going to see the energy levels of an hydrogen atom. That is a continuous line spectrum. Thank you.